When a disguised rancher saves a saloon girl from violence, their forbidden romance uncovers a deadly conspiracy that forces him to choose between love and everything he's built. The amber glow of kerosene lamps cuts through Deadwood's evening haze. Inside the Silver Dollar Saloon, cigar smoke mingles with cheap perfume and desperation. The floorboards creak under worn boots, sticky with spilled whiskey and broken dreams. "Don't hit me. I'm already hurt." The voice trembles from the back corner. Ruby Martinez presses herself against the wall, her emerald dress torn at the shoulder, revealing a purple bruise blooming across her collarbone. Her dark eyes dart between the towering figure of Bull Morrison and the exit that might as well be a mile away. Bull's meaty fist hovers inches from her face. "You think you can steal from me, girl? Think again." At the bar, a man in dusty work clothes sets down his whiskey glass. His calloused hands tell of honest labor, but his eyes hold secrets deeper than mine shafts. This is James Jake Thornfield, though tonight he's just another drifter nursing liquid courage. The sound of flesh meeting flesh never comes. Jake's hand clamps down on Bull's wrist with the grip of a man who's wrestled, steers, and won. The lady said no. Bull spins around, his breath reeking of rot gut and violence. "This ain't your business, cowboy." It is now. The saloon falls silent except for the tinny piano that continues its melancholy tune. Ruby stares at her unlikely savior, this stranger with gentle hands and storm-gray eyes who stepped between her and certain pain. Jake's voice carries the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Walk away, Morrison. Find your entertainment elsewhere." Bull's face reddens, but something in Jake's stance, the way his hand rests near his Colt, makes him reconsider. He spits on the floor and storms out, shoving past the batwing doors with enough force to make them swing wildly. Ruby's legs give out. Jake catches her before she hits the floor, his arms surprisingly gentle for someone who just faced down the town's most notorious brute. "Easy there, miss. You're safe now." Her voice comes out barely above a whisper. "Why did you help me?" Jake helps her to a chair, his touch careful, respectful. "Because someone should have helped you long before tonight." She studies his face in the lamplight. There's something different about this one. His clothes are common, but his speech carries education. His hands are rough, but his manner speaks of breeding. Most men who frequent the Silver Dollar want only one thing from girls like her. "I'm Ruby," she says, testing the waters. "Jake." He signals the bartender. "Bring the lady some water, and something for that cut." As the bartender approaches with a damp cloth, Ruby notices Jake's wedding ring, a simple gold band worn smooth by years of wear. Her heart sinks slightly, though she's not sure why. "You're married," she observes. Jake's expression darkens. "Was. My wife died 3 years ago. Cholera." "I'm sorry." "So am I." The bartender, a grizzled man named Pete, leans in close. "You best be careful, stranger. Bull Morrison don't forget, and he don't forgive. He owns half this town, including the sheriff." Jake nods his thanks for the warning, but his attention remains on Ruby. She dabs at the cut on her lip, wincing. "What did Morrison think you stole?" Jake asks. Ruby's eyes flick away. "Nothing important, just a misunderstanding." But Jake catches the lie in her voice, the way her fingers worry the fabric of her dress. There's more to this story, and more to this woman than meets the eye. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asks. "I have a room upstairs." She gestures toward the narrow staircase that leads to the saloon's second floor, where the working girls conduct their business. "That's not safe. Not with Morrison still angry." Ruby laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Nowhere's safe for someone like me, mister. But I appreciate the concern." Jake makes a decision that will change both their lives. "The boarding house down the street has clean rooms. Let me pay for one night, just until things cool down." "Why would you do that?" "Because everyone deserves a chance to sleep without fear." Ruby stares at him for a long moment. In her world, kindness always comes with a price. But something in Jake's eyes suggests he might be different. "All right," she says finally. "But just one night, As they prepare to leave, Pete the bartender catches Jake's arm. "That girl's trouble, friend. She's been asking questions about the old Cartwright place. Questions that got the last person who asked them a bullet in the back." Jake's blood runs cold. The Cartwright place. His family's former ranch lost in a poker game 5 years ago to a consortium of businessmen led by Bull Morrison. The same ranch where his father died under mysterious circumstances. "What kind of questions?" Jake asks. "About what happened to old Samuel Cartwright. About why the land changed hands so sudden-like after his death." Jake's jaw tightens. Samuel Cartwright was his father, and Jake has spent 5 years believing his death was an accident. But if Ruby's been asking questions... Outside, the night air carries the scent of sage and distant rain. Ruby pulls her shawl tight against the chill as they walk toward the boarding house. "You never told me your last name," she says. Jake hesitates. If she's been investigating his father's death, revealing his identity could be dangerous. But something about her vulnerability, her courage in the face of Morrison's threats, makes him want to trust her. "Thornfield," he says finally. "Jake Thornfield." Ruby stops walking. Her face goes pale in the moonlight. "What is it?" Jake asks. "Nothing, just, that's a strong name. Thornfield." But her reaction tells him everything. She knows exactly who he is. They reach the boarding house, a modest 2-story building with a hand-painted sign that reads, "Mrs. Henderson's Clean Rooms." Jake pays for Ruby's accommodation, ignoring her protests. "I'll check on you tomorrow," he promises. "You don't have to. I want to." As Ruby disappears inside, Jake stands in the street, his mind racing. Why would a saloon girl be investigating his father's death? What does she know that he doesn't? The next morning arrives with the harsh clarity of desert sunlight. Jake finds Ruby sitting on the boarding house porch, wearing a simple blue dress that transforms her from saloon girl to respectable woman. Without the heavy makeup and revealing clothes, she's even more beautiful but also more mysterious. "Sleep well?" he asks, settling beside her on the wooden steps. "Better than I have in months." She turns to face him. "Jake, I need to tell you something. About why I was really at the saloon last night." Before she can continue, the sound of approaching horses fills the air. Bull Morrison rides up with 3 of his men, their faces grim with purpose. "Well, well," Bull sneers. "The knight in shining armor and his rescued dove. How touching." Jake stands slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun. "Morrison, what do you want?" "What I want is my property back." Bull's eyes fix on Ruby. "The girl stole something from me, and I aim to get it back." "I didn't steal anything," Ruby says, but her voice lacks conviction. Bull dismounts, his boots hitting the dirt with ominous thuds. "Empty your pockets, girl. All of them." "She doesn't have to do anything," Jake intervenes. "Actually, she does." A new voice joins the conversation. Sheriff Tom Bradley emerges from behind the boarding house, his badge glinting in the morning sun. "I've got a warrant to search her belongings." Jake's heart sinks. Bradley is Morrison's man, bought and paid for. There'll be no justice here. "What's she supposed to have stolen?" Jake demands. Morrison grins, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "A ledger. My personal business records. Very valuable to the right person." Ruby's face goes white. Jake realizes she does have whatever Morrison's looking for, and it's important enough that he's willing to involve the corrupt sheriff to get it back. "Search her room," Bradley orders his deputy. As the men disappear inside the boarding house, Jake moves closer to Ruby. "Whatever you took, it must be important. Important enough to risk your life for." Ruby's voice drops to a whisper. "It's about your father, Jake. About how he really died." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "What do you know about my father?" "I know he didn't die in an accident. I know Morrison and his partners killed him to steal your family's land. And I know I can prove it." Before Jake can respond, the deputy emerges from the boarding house holding a leather-bound ledger. "Found it, Sheriff. Hidden in her mattress." Morrison's grin widens. "Excellent. Now we can put this unpleasantness behind us. But Ruby stands up, her chin raised defiantly. Go ahead, take it. But I've already read every page. I know about the forged documents. I know about the bribes. I know about Samuel Thornfield's murder. The silence that follows is deafening. Morrison's face goes from triumphant to murderous in seconds. You don't know what you're talking about, girl. Don't I? Ruby's voice grows stronger. I know you needed the Cartwright Ranch because it sits on top of the largest silver vein in the territory. I know you couldn't buy it because Samuel would never sell. So you killed him and forged documents to make it look like he lost it in a poker game. Jake stares at Ruby in amazement. This saloon girl has uncovered the truth he's been searching for without knowing it. And how exactly did you come by this information? Morrison asks, his voice dangerously quiet. Ruby lifts her chin higher. Because Samuel Cartwright was my father. The revelation hits Jake like lightning. Ruby isn't just some saloon girl who stumbled onto a conspiracy. She's his half-sister, the daughter his father never acknowledged, fighting to clear their father's name and reclaim their stolen inheritance. That's impossible, Jake breathes. Ruby turns to him, tears glistening in her eyes. Our father had an affair with my mother, a Mexican woman who worked as a seamstress in town. When she got pregnant, he provided for us quietly, but he never claimed me publicly. After he died, Morrison's people made sure I ended up in the saloon, where no one would believe anything I said. Jake's world tilts on its axis. Everything he thought he knew about his family, his father, his own identity, has just been rewritten. Morrison draws his gun. Well, this is touching, but I'm afraid this family reunion is over. Sheriff, arrest them both for theft and conspiracy. But Jake has heard enough. Years of grief, guilt, and unanswered questions crystallize into pure rage. His Colt clears leather faster than Morrison can blink. I don't think so. The standoff stretches taut as a wire. Morrison's men have their hands on their weapons, but Jake's reputation as a gunfighter precedes him. Even they hesitate. You can't prove anything, Morrison snarls. Maybe not in your bought court, Jake replies, but I can sure as hell make sure you don't hurt anyone else. Ruby steps forward, placing herself between the two men. There's another way. She reaches into her dress and pulls out a folded paper. I made copies of the most important pages before you found the ledger, enough to prove everything. But I'll make you a deal, Morrison. I'm listening. You sign over the deed to the Cartwright Ranch to its rightful heirs, and these copies disappear forever. You keep your other ill-gotten gains, but you leave our family alone. Morrison's eyes narrow. And if I refuse? Then these copies go to the territorial governor, along with a full account of your activities. I may be just a saloon girl, but I learned to read and write real good. Good enough to make sure your story gets told proper. Jake watches this exchange with growing admiration. Ruby isn't just his sister. She's a fighter, someone who survived in a world that tried to crush her and still found the strength to seek justice. Morrison considers his options. The territorial governor is an honest man, one of the few officials Morrison can't buy. If Ruby's evidence reaches him, Morrison's entire empire could crumble. The ranch is worth more than you know, Morrison says finally. I know exactly what it's worth, Ruby replies. But I also know what justice is worth. And right now, I'm willing to trade one for the other. After a long moment, Morrison holsters his gun. Sheriff, prepare the papers. As the corrupt lawmen reluctantly comply, Jake finds himself looking at Ruby with new eyes. She's not the victim he thought he was rescuing. She's a survivor, a fighter, someone who's been protecting their father's memory while he wallowed in ignorance. Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning? He asks quietly. Would you have believed me? A saloon girl claiming to be the daughter of the respected Samuel Cartwright? Jake considers this. She's right. His prejudices would have blinded him to the truth. Besides, Ruby continues, I needed to know what kind of man you were, whether you'd fight for what's right or just for what's yours. And what's your verdict? Ruby smiles, the first genuine smile he's seen from her. You'll do, brother. You'll do just fine. An hour later, the deed transfer is complete. Morrison and his men ride away, defeated but not destroyed. Jake and Ruby stand outside the boarding house, joint owners of their father's ranch and keepers of his true legacy. "What happens now?" Jake asks. "Now we go home," Ruby says. "We rebuild what was torn down. We honor our father's memory the right way." Jake nods, but something still troubles him. "Ruby, about last night at the saloon. Morrison said you stole from him, but you were really trying to expose him. Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" Ruby's expression grows serious. "Because I needed to know I could trust you completely. In my world, Jake, trust is a luxury most people can't afford. I had to be sure you were the kind of man who'd help a stranger without expecting anything in return. And if I hadn't helped you, then I would have known our father's son wasn't worthy of his legacy." Jake understands now. Last night wasn't just about Morrison's violence or Ruby's safety. It was a test, a way for her to measure his character before revealing the truth that would bind them together. "You took a hell of a risk," he says. "Everything worthwhile requires risk," Ruby replies. "Our father taught me that, even if he never claimed me publicly." As they prepare to leave Deadwood behind, Jake realizes that finding Ruby has given him more than just answers about his father's death. It's given him family, purpose, and a chance to build something better than what came before. The sun climbs higher, burning away the morning mist and revealing the clear path ahead. Together, they'll return to the Cartwright Ranch, not as the broken remnants of a scattered family, but as partners in rebuilding their father's dream. But first, there's one more thing Jake needs to know. "Ruby, when you were working at the saloon gathering information about Morrison, did anyone else get hurt because of your investigation?" Ruby's face grows somber. "There was a man, a drifter named Charlie Webb. He started asking the same questions I was asking. Morrison's men found him in an alley 3 days later." Jake's jaw tightens. "So there have been other victims. That's why I had to be so careful, why I couldn't trust anyone until I was sure." Ruby looks at him directly. "Morrison may have signed over the ranch, but he's not going to forget this. We'll need to watch our backs." "Let him come," Jake says grimly. "We've got right on our side now, and we've got each other." "Jake, are you angry? About father having another family, I mean. About me existing?" Jake considers this carefully. 3 days ago, he thought he was alone in the world, the last of the Cartwright line. Now he discovers he has a sister, someone who shares his blood and his father's stubborn sense of justice. "No," he says finally. "I'm grateful. Our father may have made mistakes, but he raised 2 children who know the difference between right and wrong. That's a legacy worth having." Ruby smiles, and for the first time since their father's death, Jake feels like he's truly coming home. The wagon ride to the ranch takes most of the day, giving them time to share stories and fill in the gaps of their separate lives. Ruby tells him about growing up in the Mexican quarter of town, how their father would visit quietly, bringing money and books, teaching her to read and write in both English and Spanish. Jake shares memories of life on the ranch, of their father's love for the land, and his dreams of building something lasting. He talks about the guilt he's carried since the supposed poker game, wondering if he could have done something to prevent his father's foolishness. "He never gambled," Ruby says firmly. "Samuel Cartwright was the most careful man with money I ever knew. He saved every penny to make sure both his families were provided for." Then the poker game story was completely fabricated. From beginning to end, Morrison needed a believable reason for the land transfer. A gambling debt fit the bill perfectly. As the sun begins to set, they crest a hill and see the Cartwright Ranch spread out below them. The house needs work, the fences are broken, and weeds have overtaken the vegetable garden their father once tended with such care. But the bones are good. The structure is sound. With work and dedication, it can be restored to its former glory. "It's beautiful," Ruby whispers. "It's home," Jake replies. They spend their first evening in the old house, cleaning and planning. Ruby proves to be practical and hardworking. attacking the dust and cobwebs with the same determination she showed in facing down Morrison. As they sit by the fireplace that night, sharing a simple meal of beans and hardtack, Jake broaches the subject that's been on his mind all day. Ruby, I know this might sound presumptuous, but I'd like you to take our father's name. Legally, I mean. You're a Cartwright, and you should be recognized as such. Ruby's eyes fill with tears. I've dreamed of that my whole life. But are you sure? It might cause talk in town. Let them talk, Jake says firmly. We know the truth, and that's what matters. Over the following weeks, they work together to restore the ranch. Jake handles the heavy labor while Ruby manages the books and correspondence. Her education, hard-won through years of secret study, proves invaluable in dealing with suppliers and potential buyers for their cattle. Word spreads quickly through the territory about the Cartwright siblings and their confrontation with Bull Morrison. Some people whisper about scandal and illegitimate children, but others see a different story. A family reunited, fighting to reclaim their rightful heritage. 1 month after their return, they receive an unexpected visitor. Territorial Governor William Hayes arrives with a small escort, drawn by reports of corruption in Deadwood. Miss Cartwright, he says, tipping his hat to Ruby. I understand you have information about certain irregularities in land transfers and business practices. Ruby exchanges a glance with Jake. They had agreed to let sleeping dogs lie as long as Morrison honored their agreement. But if the governor is asking questions... What kind of information are you looking for, Governor? Jake asks carefully. The kind that might explain why 3 other ranchers in this area have died under mysterious circumstances in the past 5 years. All of them shortly before their land was acquired by Morrison's consortium. Ruby's face goes pale. 3 others? Samuel Cartwright wasn't Morrison's first victim, the governor explains, or his last. There was another death just last week, a homesteader named Peterson who refused to sell his water rights. Jake feels the familiar fire of righteous anger building in his chest. Governor, if you're asking whether we have evidence of Morrison's crimes, the answer is yes. But we made a deal. A deal made under duress isn't legally binding, the governor interrupts. And more importantly, it doesn't prevent future murders. Ruby stands up, her decision made. Governor, I'll tell you everything I know, but I want your word that you'll see this through to the end. No political compromises, no backroom deals. Morrison and his people need to face justice for what they've done. You have my word, Miss Cartwright. The investigation that follows rocks the entire territory. Ruby's evidence, combined with testimony from other victims' families, reveals a pattern of murder, fraud, and corruption that reaches into the highest levels of local government. Morrison and Sheriff Bradley are arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. The trials become a sensation, drawing reporters from as far away as Denver and San Francisco. Throughout it all, Jake and Ruby stand together, supporting each other through the difficult process of seeking justice for their father and the other victims. On the day of Morrison's sentencing, they sit in the packed courtroom as the judge delivers his verdict. Guilty on all counts with a sentence of death by hanging. As they leave the courthouse, Ruby takes Jake's arm. Do you think Father would be proud of us? Jake looks back at the building where justice has finally been served, then at his sister, this remarkable woman who refused to let their father's murder go unpunished. I think he'd be amazed, Jake says. He raised a daughter who's braver than any man I've ever known, and he'd be proud to call you his own. 6 months later, the Cartwright Ranch is thriving again. Jake has expanded the cattle operation while Ruby has started a small school for the children of Mexican workers, teaching them to read and write in both languages. They've also established a fund to help other families who've been victimized by corrupt land grabs, using some of the money recovered from Morrison's seized assets. One evening, as they sit on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, Ruby asks the question that's been on both their minds. Jake, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been in that saloon that night? Jake considers this. I think you would have found another way. You're too stubborn to give up. Maybe, but I'm glad it happened the way it did. I'm glad I got to see what kind of man my brother really is before I told him who I was. And what kind of man is that? Ruby smiles. The kind who helps strangers without expecting anything in return. The kind who fights for justice even when it's dangerous. The kind Samuel Cartwright would be proud to call his son. As the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, Jake reflects on the journey that brought them to this moment. A chance encounter in a saloon led to the discovery of family, the exposure of corruption, and the restoration of their father's legacy. But more than that, it led to the understanding that family isn't just about blood. It's about the choices people make, the values they uphold, and the willingness to stand together when it matters most. "Ruby," he says quietly, "I'm glad you're my sister." "I'm glad you're my brother," she replies, "and I'm glad we found each other." In the distance, a coyote calls to its pack, a wild sound that speaks of freedom and survival against all odds. It's a fitting soundtrack for their story, Jake thinks. Two survivors who found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. The Cartwright name will endure, carried forward by two people who understand that true strength comes not from what you can take, but from what you're willing to give. And in the years to come, when people tell the story of the Cartwright siblings, they'll speak of courage, justice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. But tonight they simply sit together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities to honor their father's memory. The wounded dove has found her strength, and the disguised rancher has discovered his true identity. Together, they've written a new chapter in the ongoing story of the American West, where justice can still triumph and family can be found in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this tale of justice and family bonds in the Old West, make sure to subscribe for more epic storytelling adventures. Next week, we'll explore another untold story from the frontier. The Preacher's Secret, where a man of God must choose between his faith and his gun when outlaws threaten his congregation. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it.